Hi, everyone. My name is Heidi, and I'm from the Kenyon Alumni Office. Just wanted to let you all know that we will be getting started very shortly, probably within the next minute. I just wanted to let you all know later in the program, if you have any questions, feel free to actually physically raise your hand to say that you have a question, or you can use the reactions tab in your Zoom screen and physically and click the raise hand function to indicate that you want to ask a question. We also, just as a FYI, we will be recording this and we will be sharing it on our reunion webpage, and it will be on our Kenyon YouTube page as well. And with that being said, I'm going to hand it over to Bob.
Okay, thanks. Thank you very much, Heidi. Hello, everyone. I guess for some of us, it's been quite a while. I'm Bob Fine, I'm matriculated with the class of 71. I have my oldest son graduated in 09, and my middle son, who's on, I saw on the, is on this call, graduated in 12. I have had I certainly didn't picture this when I was at Kenyon, kind of where I would be heading, but somehow I ended up on Wall Street for over 30 years in investment banking, particularly in the tax exempt market, and dealing quite a bit down in the weeds with numbers, which is something I can't even quite understand, given that freshman year I got a D from Professor Finkbeiner in calculus, but it turned out that I did have a hidden proficiency in math, and I have the ability to kind of see cash flows in my head and work with them both in Excel and I've been a programmer for the last 15 years. So something I guess good must have rubbed off somewhere at Kenyon.
A D was worth a lot more then.
Right, I'm sure it was. At the end of 2018, I retired, and my wife and I moved from just north of New York City in Westchester to Seabrook Island, South Carolina, which is where we are now. And I had I guess through some friends of mine, some contacts, and then my programming interest, I had known about the blockchain even before I retired. And then I took up, I was very interested in digital photography, but transitioned to using my programming skills to create the digital images. So I left the camera behind and said, well, using principles of computer graphics and fractal geometry and projective geometry, I write code that creates images, and I've been kind of focusing on that, doing digital art. And I'll kind of go to this slide, which is kind of why we're here today, discussing something that even before March, quite frankly, I was unaware of: non-fungible tokens, NFTs. And what happened in March on March 11th is that an investor paid $69.3 million. That's the third highest price for a piece of art by a living artist, for a non-fungible token. And it's actually the image here on the left, which is by an artist who uses a handle called Beepless, but his real name is Mike Winkelmann. And he's kind of a high-end graphics designer who moved his family to literally about 30 miles from where I'm sitting right now in Charleston, and unbeknownst to anybody, because he didn't like the cold weather. And he was he's been doing this work. He's not a coder, but he uses programs that I would term as Photoshop on steroids. And this one work he did is called Everydays. And so for 5,000 days in a row, he created a picture, and then he put these all together. And this is the actual the piece of art that was sold for 69.3 million as a non-fungible token. I'll describe in a minute how to think about non-fungible tokens, but it's important to understand up front that they represent a hugely disruptive force in the financial and the art markets. And it's really the disruptive force that it represents that I want to kind of try to dig into in this talk and examine. So some basics on non-fungible tokens. So Bitcoins and Dogecoins and Ethereum, they're fungible tokens, right? So they're discrete, but they're each identical and interchangeable. Non-fungible tokens, like a work of art, is one of a kind. There's no copy of it out there. And non-fungible tokens in the form of art are digitally encoded intangible assets. So this is where you're going to kind of have to, your head is going to have trouble kind of intuiting what this thing is, because the buyer of a non-fungible token isn't buying a physical copy of the image, and that buyer is not purchasing the copyright to the image. The buyer is not a buyer of the executable code that in most of these cases kind of render the image. I have an analogy which will kind of give me away as a 50-year-old, as an ardent Red Sox fan over 50 years ago. That a Ted Williams baseball card autographed by Ted Williams is an analogy in a sense. The buyer is when somebody buys an NFT, they're purchasing the provenance. In the case of the baseball card, they're purchasing the provenance of an authentic tangible asset, except NFTs are intangible. You're not getting the art itself. You're getting a certificated kind of block of information that we'll get to that sits in the blockchain. Now, I think that the best way to make sense of this is not to think about tangible, intangible, but think about an NFT like Bitcoin as a financial asset. So NFTs have been getting some traction since the sale and even before, because they, like any financial asset, they can rise in value, they can decrease in value, and they can be traded. So at the end of the day, what we're really talking about is a financial asset, and NFTs are an efficient way of turning art into a financial asset. And as I say, kind of one more thing, they happen to live on the blockchain. the blockchain kind of gives life to them. And so the next question is, you know, what's the blockchain? What the hell is the blockchain? Well, at its most basic, it's nothing more than a database, right? It's very good at storing digitally encoded, immutable records, authenticating ownership of financial assets, or quite frankly, any other piece of information. So you can put digital files like JPEGs onto the blockchain. You can put legal documents, real estate contracts, or any contracts into the blockchain. And it's highly secure. Now I say it's impossible to hack, but qualify that, because there have been instances of kind of people, I'm not sure hacking is the right term, but getting around some of the safeguards. But nonetheless, it's very, very difficult to do. That the cryptography is based on a hash variable algorithm, which generates, given an input, it'll generate 100 or 200 character, in a sense, passwords. They're called private keys. Each private key, if this makes sense at all, so that it is part of the proceeding, is part of the next block that's created. So the blockchain is literally these blocks of information. Each block is secured with its own private key, and then the private key of each block becomes part of the private key of the next block. So typically in computer science, and I never formally studied computer science, but the level of protection kind of offered by a cryptographic kind of safeguard is measured in kind of the time it would take to break it, and given the nature of the algorithms here, it would take a significant amount of time, and you'd have to break the code not only on one block, but if you did that, you would break the whole chain. So again, that's kind of challenging to get your head around, and quite frankly, I don't even have my head around that aspect of it completely. But the next point is that as a database, no single entity owns or controls the blockchain. Now there's more than one blockchain. There's Bitcoin, there's Ethereum. So it doesn't necessarily have to be kind of one entity, but obviously the two main blockchains are right now are Bitcoin and Ethereum. So and duplicate copies, it's referred to as a distributed ledger. Again, where everybody owns it and no one owns it, but certainly no third-party organizations control this at all. So these copies live on, or they're called nodes, and they can live on as many as 100,000 different computers that are part of this network. And if you were interested, you could. There's some equipment involved if you wanted to be the keeper of one of these nodes. But the point is they're self-sustaining. It's the way I would term it. They operate completely independently of any public or private third party. And you can kind of understand that. I mean, one measure of that is the success of Bitcoin, which is an independent currency that, again, just kind of lives on its own on the blockchain. And the key point at the end is the blockchain is highly disruptive. So why is it disruptive? Well, consider the following, right? Throughout the entire history of the development of financial markets, right, vital roles have always existed for third-party public and private institutions, whether it's the government controlling the currency or it's a big kind of institutional bank and trust company that that manages assets on behalf of individuals and trading companies. There's always been a reliance on third-party institutions, and the name trust company is apt because again, throughout the history of the financial markets, people have always had to put their trust in these third parties to act in a responsible way, and in terms of managing other people's assets. So we come to the key point here. The blockchain is a self-sustaining repository for financial assets and as a platform for trading them, eliminates the roles that third-party institutions have traditionally played in the financial markets up to this point in history. So as a result, the blockchain has become an existential threat to those institutions. And when I say that, I'm not exaggerating in the least. I've got a very close friend who has a very senior position at the Bank of New York Mellon, right? And they're the largest custodian in the world for financial assets. And they view the blockchain as an existential threat. Nothing less than that. And as he put it to me, they've decided as a strategy not to fight the threat, but rather to embrace it. And it's interesting to note, just one piece of data, that a number of months ago, or I think it was the end of last year, BNY Mellon announced that they will serve as a custodian for Bitcoin. So, you know, this is a serious business. If you're a major kind of money center bank, and all the big players like J.P. Morgan and BNY Mellon has been putting a lot of money into this technology, understanding it and leveraging it. It's one thing that I found fascinating, and is that why does Bitcoin need a custodian? Well, what the custodian is managing on behalf of investors in Bitcoin isn't the Bitcoin, it's the passwords. Because the easiest way to lose money buying Bitcoin is to lose the private key. And if you've got, if you're a fund with, trading Bitcoin as an alternative asset class, and you've got millions of dollars in Bitcoin, you've got a lot of kind of passwords you've got to keep track of. And that's one of the roles that Mellon is going to be playing kind of going forward. So what about the art market? So one thing that when I was kind of reading about that, I'll call it the Beepless Sale. And again, this guy was kind of under the radar. And I know some artists in Charleston. I'm on the fringes of that community, but this guy was totally out of the loop, just totally underground. And maybe if I kind of had put my mind to it, I could have figured this out on my own, but I had never heard of an NFT before that. But one thing in reading about it, knowing something about the disruptive nature and the self-sustaining nature of the blockchain, I I was puzzled by the fact that of why Christie's was involved as auctioneer. Well, one obvious reason is, of course, they kind of being at the table, they create a lot of hype and buzz, and they get the word. They're able to get the word out on on a worldwide basis. But again, to come back to the point about the blockchain is more than capable of self-managing an auction process for the purchase or sale of NFTs. So Christie's role as auctioneer kind of may have been helpful in certain respects to get the word out, as I said, but its role as an auctioneer was totally redundant. So you have to ask the question, what has Christie's real value been for the past 250 years since they've been in existence? And I would argue that analogous to the role of third-party financial institutions, right, to keep and maintain financial assets as a fiduciary on behalf of others. In the art market, Christie is the fiduciary of a work of art's provenance, right? You go to Christie's when you need to verify the authenticity of a work of art. And when Christie's auctions a work of art, it's a seal of approval that you can be assured of that piece of art's authenticity. So again, to talk about, to bring it back to trust and disruption in the art market, considering the following, for the past 250 years, the primary role that Christie has played, as I just said, in the art market is the fiduciary of provenance. But on the blockchain, the provenance of an NFT is self-embedded, and I would say self-updated, and it is immutable, right? So by virtue of it, the provenance of this piece that was sold is established by the fact that it's in the blockchain. It carries the pertinent information about its creator, its creation, and if it's sold, that information is automatically updated, and that information is immutable, which means it can never be changed. It can never be changed because of the kind of the impenetrability of the blockchain. So the conclusion is that the blockchain is an existential threat to Christie's ongoing existence, and Sotheby's as well. So again, what I read into seeing Christie kind of at the table here is they're not fighting the threat, they're embracing it. I'll just kind of quote from this Christie's tweet from early February 16th, which is what, Christie's is proud to offer every day is the first 5,000 days by Beeple is the first purely digital work of art ever offered by a major auction house. Bidding will, it's in a sense they're offering it, but again, as I said, their role is redundant, and I think one of self-preservation. Now, well, let me go to the last slide. Talk about the future of NFTs. Just the future is fundamentally the future. Right now, where NFTs are clearly in a bubble, right? If you look at the guy who spent the $69 million, he's I think he's in Indian, but he's a hedge fund investor. He runs a hedge fund for NFTs, and if you look at his activity just before the sale, I mean, he was in the market. He was already buying works from Beeples. He was creating. He was splitting up the works. One thing that's possible with NFTs on the blockchain is you can kind of split them up into pieces and sell off the pieces. So he was doing that. He was taking a position, and then in a sense, without doing anything illegal, he was kind of, you know, manipulating. You could argue he was manipulating the market, so that when, you know, this everyday's piece came up, he spent $69 million. And one thing that does is it just, you know, it just drives the market up generally. So, you know, you can bet he reasoned through this to think that, you know, he's not losing money by making this investment. So the key, you know, and so that's kind of my argument, that right now it's a bubble. There's activity going on, but the ultimate question over the long term is, how do you price an NFT, right? And that's critical, because if you can't come up with a sound methodology to determine the current value of a financial asset, there's no way you can reasonably estimate what its value is going to be in the future. So it's just like a stock. I mean, just take a stock as a financial asset. If you're looking to invest in a stock, you have information on the stock's company and the cash flows, right, that company is producing. And you know, it's all about valuing the cash flows and coming up with a judgment as to whether you think the market is undervaluing them or overvaluing them. So it's kind of the same thing, but with an NFT, you don't really have kind of cash flow. So kind of in closing, I would suggest, you know, there are some methodologies like comparable sales, although it takes some time to establish a significant set of comparable sales. There's provenance, and by that I would mean that if you look at the activity now that's going on with NFTs, I mean, I have 5 NFTs on a site called OpenSea, but they sit there along with thousands and thousands of others, right? And I don't have any, you know, people don't know who I am. And so, you know, unless you have some sort of reputation or already part of some kind of rarefied kind of group that has been able to channel in to this kind of set of buyers, you're kind of lost at least at the beginning. But what I consider the most important thing that's lacking now is a set of aesthetics to really kind of define kind of good and bad digital art, to put the matter somewhat crassly. And I think that's going to happen over time, because digital art in a myriad of forms right now is just ubiquitous. And I think and I'm trying to kind of practice this in my work over time. In terms of point of view of fine art, you've got to identify what you can do with a computer that you couldn't otherwise do to distinguish what you're doing from others, and really, again, kind of wrapping your work in an aesthetic that kind of says, so for example, in terms of my work, I try to relate randomness to complex systems that evoke kind of organic and natural forms. But again, that's an aesthetic which is kind of rampant through traditional art since for hundreds of years. and it's kind of carried right through the 20th century. I think that remains to be kind of developed in a mature way in terms of digital art. And that I consider will be the ultimate mitigator of what I term kind of out of control price volatility. Because in the art market, there'll always be more volatility than in the traditional financial markets, because you're dealing with something that's kind of much more amorphous and is, you know, kind of less concrete. So it's been about a half an hour. I wasn't sure how long I was going to be talking, but I guess the answer is about 30 minutes. So I kind of welcome. I welcome also, you know, any questions and I would suggest too, my contact information, I think should be in the chat, and I would kind of encourage you, if you have any questions, kind of, you know, after today, or kind of any points to raise, I'd be more, you know, feel free to reach out to me. Any questions?
Yeah, Bob, I was a little bemused by your opinion that NFT art is an existential threat to the current physical art market. Are you suggesting that you know, Rembrandt?
No, I don't think.
Go
I didn't mean to suggest.
Somewhere?
I didn't mean to suggest that at all. It's disruptive in that it's a threat to Christie's. It's a threat to one aspect of the business, right, of the industry.
Well, would not Christie's and Sotheby's still be
right?
You know, brokering a lot of this traditional art?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. Now there could be, you know, there could be a way of transferring, leveraging the blockchain to be the keeper of the provenance of some of that art. Now, I don't think that's being done now, but I don't think it's out of the question that the blockchain could be used for that purpose.
Well, certainly at the very high end of the art market, I could see buyers saying, you know, this is in a certain sense a safer investment, because nobody's going to steal it. It's not going to get destroyed in a hurricane, stuff like that.
Right.
And so that might depress prices in the traditional art market.
Possibly. Although there still seems to be plenty of money out there to go around. But again, I mean, you know, I was trying to, the points I was trying to make in terms of disruptiveness, you know, it was to kind of abstract some of this, right? Because, I mean, there are issues with the blockchain. There's no doubt about it. Originally, it was seen, oh, this is going to replace credit card companies, right? All this point of sale stuff, we'll just do it on the blockchain. We won't need American Express. We won't need MasterCard and Visa. Well, the blockchain is not, it's difficult to scale. It's difficult to scale for a number of reasons. Again, it has copies, duplicate copies of what the information in the blockchain have to live on a multitude of network computers. And so when you add, you know, let's say an NFT sale to one block, that block has to be copied over, you know, 50,000 computers. That's kind of one of the, you know, there's a big to-do about how much energy the cryptocurrencies are using to maintain themselves. This is, you know, one aspect of it. So it's not gonna, it's clearly not gonna replace American Express or MasterCard, but still, it's still, again, this self-sustaining kind of, database idea it has been very successful for cryptocurrencies. Yeah. I mean, Bitcoin close its price, its value today is 40,000. So the big, the big money banks are taking this very seriously, and I would and it's quite clear from Christie's behavior they're taking it seriously too.
Who pays for the operation of the blockchain? I mean, all that energy's got to be paid for by somebody. Right.
So for example, the term of art is minted. So I minted, I think, 5 or 6 of my digital images as NFTs, and you have to pay what they call and it's somewhat complicated to kind of jump through the hoops to be able to do that. But on the way through jumping through the hoops, you have to pay what they call a gas fee. So you have to buy, since NFTs are on the Ethereum blockchain, you have to buy some ether. I think I laid out $300 or $400 for 1 ether, which I think now is worth over 1,000. But out of that, they took maybe 100 for gas fees. So the gas fees are one of the ways that this is being paid for. Charlie, yeah.
Yeah. I just. Thanks, Bob. Do you wonder, do you see if sort of more, if artists who work primarily in physical art will transition to NFTs? Do you see as kind of a trend, or?
Right. So it's much easier, right? So the blockchain and NFT have solved the critical problem for digital artists, right? And that it's been up to this point, it was hard to sell a piece of digital art because what were you selling? The code, a copy. You could duplicate the code. This kind of is a way around that. But so for the traditional artists, right, as I said, and I'm sure people are going to try this, and it could easily head in this direction. If you're a physical artist, what you would need to do is take a digital image of your art, whether it's 3-dimensional or 2-dimensional, and that's what you would place on the blockchain. And arguably, right, since it's a financial asset that can go up and down in value and be traded, it has just as much kind of opportunity to retain and accrue value as a digital file. And again, ultimately, I think the aesthetics will come into play.
Well, let me come back to what this person who purchased the NFT for $69 million or whatever it was got. He gets proof of ownership of the NFT, but does he get? But you said he doesn't necessarily get a copy of the piece of art. I mean, where's the copy of the piece of art? Is that around somewhere where someone can blow it up and look at one of the 5,000 images, or? Yeah,
the copyright to that still is retained by Mike Winkelmann, and Mike Winkelmann can make copies. And I mean, if the buyer of the NFT, he could, and I think this is happening in some of the sales. What you note online with regard to a piece is that the buyer will get the NFT and they'll also get a printed copy, signed by the artist. So at least they have something to hang up. but the value is in the NFT. It's in the financial asset that, again, that can be bought and sold and traded. It's in, you know, the interesting thing. This is fascinating because South Carolina. Because I know this because I have a studio, an art studio in downtown Charleston, where I keep my 44-inch wide Epson printer, right? So because I'm doing digital art, the only way for me to show it and manifest it is by printing it. And so because I have the printer and because I do some printing for other people and generate some revenue that way, I'm set up with the South Carolina Department of Revenue. And there's a sales tax in South Carolina. It's 9%. So, you know, the state wants its sales tax revenue. But there's a carve out. If you're a photographer, digital photographer, and your deliverable to the client is a print, you have to charge sales tax. But if you're delivering just the digital file, the intangible, to the client, then there's no sales tax triggered. And so, and actually, I asked the question to. I've got a South Carolina accountant here, and I asked him the question. I surmised that this guy Mike Winkelmann in North Charleston, who received $69 million for the sale of this NFT, he's going to have to pay federal taxes, no doubt about that. But he's not on the hook for a 9% sales tax because it's it's not a tangible asset that was sold. So I'm sure that the state of South Carolina is not going to let that loophole kind of exist too much longer. Particularly if sales of NFTs to South Carolina residents kind of picks up. So,
but I would have no particular interest in having a single printed copy of 5,000 Days on my wall. I'm not even really sure I'd enjoy having it as attractive as your newer pieces are. While it might be interesting to have one on the wall, it would be much more interesting to have a digital image of it that I could blow up and explore in detail. And I assume in 5,000 Days, one could blow up and look at an individual day in digital form.
And I bet you could kind of work, you could search to see if that file may just be on the internet somewhere that you could just kind of bring down, or you could reach out to the artist. I'm sure he'd be able to be more than happy to sell you a high resolution, file. But you're right. The value itself is the one that's on the blockchain. And again, I think, in my view, that's because it acts in every way, almost every way, like it's a financial asset. And right now,
So I have a question. Since you mentioned taxes, this seems like this would be another disruptive effect that maybe you save for a different talk, but it seems to me this is a great way to hide your money, and that the governments of the world are going to be very interested in figuring out a way to keep track of what's going on so they can tax it appropriately.
Right.
So what's your feeling about that and how that's panning out, or what do you think the track of that's going to be?
Well, I think that the government's going to get involved, and right now you're right. Cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin are under the radar, and but as it becomes more visible and the price kind of continues to increase, the government's going to want their piece of the pie, and they're going to regulate it. I haven't really kind of kept up with exactly where that all stands now, But again, the more it's traded, it's not either when you, well, yeah, we can talk about the Treasury wanting, or the IRS and the Treasury tracking it, but then there's also what is it? You know, the SEC is going to get involved in regulating particularly the cryptocurrencies, because they're being used more and more by money managers and the big funds, right, as an alternative asset class. So it's just, you know, I don't know exactly kind of how everything is going to shake out, but this is a powerful, becoming a powerful, well, it's become a powerful disruptive force, really, you know, that you know, you ignore it at your peril.
So since there's a moment of silence, I'll ask another question. I heard this, you know, secondhand, and I don't know much about it, so this could be entirely incorrect. But to the point about, you know, whether you have this on your own to view and nobody else can see it, I was told that people are buying NFTs such as videos of LeBron James making a layup and buying it for a considerable amount of money. And anybody that wants to, can you look at the same video on YouTube? Is that?
That's right. That's right.
So you literally are just buying the provenance. You are not buying, not only not a physical thing, but it's not even just yours. Anybody can look at it anytime they want to.
That's right. Absolutely right. But I think again, and it's becoming clear to me. It became a little bit clear as I was putting this together. You're buying the provenance, and you're buying the fact that it's a financial asset. You're buying the fact that it's on the blockchain, and right. It's by virtue of it being on the blockchain, you can buy and sell and trade it, and it then, in that sense, it acts like a you know, like Bitcoin, in the same way. The kind of, but is, you know, Bitcoin is very risky. And right, you know, if you start trading in NFTs right now, I got to think that's even riskier, because I think a lot of this is just kind of, you know, guys who have kind of gamed the system and kind of understand kind of bubbles, and, you know, they're in it right now because they can, you know, make money. But where it's going to end up and how long, you know, and how long that's going to take is anybody's guess. So, you know, if you're an artist, you know, you put something out there. It's not that expensive. It's, yeah, but you know, you're not putting yourself at risk. You're just, you know, it's totally unlikely unless you kind of, you know, figure out kind of the you know, the key to kind of getting the buzz and getting exposure. You know, you know, nobody's going to kind of see it, and even if they see it, they're not going to be interested, because, you know, again, it doesn't have that buzz. I mean, you know, my strategy or tactic is to, I'm still putting together a body of work, but it's then to kind of, based on that body of work, then to kind of reach out to the players, you know, the platforms now that are kind of curating the NFTs. Kind of, what is it? Nifty. You know, my short-term memory just isn't that great. I'm sure you can all identify with that. So, but, you know, but there are these platforms out there that are self-styled curators. So they do blast, you know, with selected artists to the, you know, to the market that's right now trading and all this stuff. So, you know, that would be, you know, my strategy to the extent kind of going forward. I think there may, you know, that to me is the only kind of doorway to, you know, making some money here, if any.
If I may insert something that isn't quite relevant, as a computer scientist who was also a student of Dan Finkbeiner, I really like your art.
Oh, good.
I enjoyed looking at it. Thank you.
No, I appreciate that. Did you study computer graphics?
Well, I was a math major because they didn't have computer science majors.
No, I know. Oh, so did
computer science, but I have taught some computer graphics. Oh, so I have looked at the formulas for light reflection and that kind of thing in those structures.
Right. There's ray tracing. Maybe I can reach out to you kind of offline because I've kind of reached.
I don't know. I'm not really an expert. You know, I've taught the first semester or so of computer graphics.
I use Mathematica. Are you familiar with that? The Wolfram language? Yeah.
Anyhow, I'm the only Edward Ortman on Google, so I'm easy to find.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, I find that, I mean, it's since I'm doing two-dimensional stuff and really haven't had an interest in animation and haven't had any kind of formal training, you know, I'm pretty good in terms of computational thinking within the Mathematica kind of ecosystem, but you know, to access the graphics card, you know, you really need a knowledge of C++ or some language like that, and something more object oriented. And I'm just kind of maybe out of fear, I don't know. I just resisted kind of going down that route, even though that would clearly provide me with certain advantages. I'm not sure in the end it's kind of, you know, worth the value that I find in Mathematica in terms of the you know, the economy of writing the statements and the power they have. And I've mastered the art of compiling kind of some basic functions in Mathematica, and that really speeds things up by, you know, 10 or 20 times. So
that have you presented at the Wolfram Tech Conference?
I did.
Well, when did you do that? I go almost every year. I'm going to have to look for you now.
All right. So 2 years ago, I was there.
Yeah.
In person.
I was too.
So
I wish I'd known about you then.
Well, yeah. I didn't know, but yeah.
Yeah.
And what did I make? Oh, I made a presentation on, I was using Mathematica while I was still working to write this code that operated over Bloomberg data sets.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I think I remember that. Yeah, okay.
That was me.
I was thinking you did an art thing. I think I
No, I did the art thing this past October online.
Online, yeah, of course.
Online, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's,
well, if we go back in person this year, which I think we probably will, are you going to be there?
I hope so.
Yeah, yeah.
I hope so.
I might see you there.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to you know, graduation next year. I'm planning on coming to the campus then for that.
Right, yeah.
And yeah, and my son who's actually on it's on his 5-year cycle. So looking forward to that.
Well, good.
Yeah, I hobnobbed. I chatted with Stephen. He's a character.
Oh yeah, I know. I've had many conversations.
Yeah, right.
And he has a connection to Kenyon too, I found.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, Judy Holdner, who's in the math department at Kenyon right now, went to U of I, and she house sat for him. So he knows Judy.
Oh, okay. I've met Judy.
Yeah. So she and Stephen are friends.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a character.
Oh, he is a real character.
He was butting heads with Feynman. I read a couple of kind of letters or something. I guess he was a youngster, but
when he came to the U.S., that was his first job in the U.S. was Feynman's assistant.
Right.
And then he sort of went off on his own, and now he's doing physics his own way, which is extremely interesting. Anyway, off the topic, sorry.
That's all right.
We'll have to chat sometime.
Yeah, please feel free to kind of reach out.
Yes.
Anything else? It's been a real pleasure. Thank you. And hopefully we'll all catch up soon. Won't take another 50 years. I'll tell you one other thing. I've remained close with Michael Evans. He and Harry Clore had a very profound impact on my life coming from Kenyon. And I every time I went to campus, when my two sons were there, I would always sit down. I'd always call Harry and sit down with him. And initially I did that with Michael because he was still there. But I've stayed in touch with Michael, and I actually visited him once, probably about 10 years ago out in Tucson. And I called him yesterday. I hadn't spoken to him actually in a couple of years, since just before we moved, to tell him about this. But he sounded great. But he's about 10 years older than us 50th reunion guys are. But he sounds just the same, and he was kind of very sharp, and he had a conflict, so he couldn't be on. But I wanted to tell him about this. But so it's Kenyon had a very profound positive effect on me, and it was quite an experience. And it's what's really great too is that I have that to share with two of my three sons. So, okay. Make sure you take my contact information, and again, I'm happy to follow up at any point in time. So I'm just going to write some, and then Michael. Okay. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Okay. Stop share. Thanks, Heidi.
Thank you guys for joining us.
Okay.